Hello friend, welcome back to Acre Homestead. Today we are going to tackle canning the black beans that we harvested from 2023's garden. So the first thing we need to do is actually clean these black beans. You can see all this debris in here from the actual harvesting. But before I do that, before I do anything to these, I want to make sure I save a bunch of them to plant in next year's garden. So I'm gonna save way more than I think I need so that in case something goes wrong, I still have these black beans. Put the lid on it and I'm gonna write 2023 black beans. These are gonna go on the shelf along with the black beans that I saved from 2 years ago. I grew these beans from these beans, but these are like my prized possessions. Seeds, my prized seeds, because I've been growing and saving these since 2020. I want to make sure I keep enough for future years. So these are going to go here, and next year we're going to plant these out. So now that we have those saved, we can go clean these seeds. So this stuff is really light. Even just picking it up, the wind wants to blow it away. But there's quite a bit in here. So what I have found the easiest way to get the beans from the debris is to use a box fan. Here you can see the really beautiful black beans. There's still some more stuff that needs to be cleaned out, but all this was in the bowl. So that is looking a lot better, but I'm gonna keep doing this about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times until I don't see any of this debris in here anymore. I think I've got them clean now. So now we need to wash these beans. There still could be junk in here, like I just found something. So what I'm gonna do is just take a couple handfuls at a time. And I'm gonna wash 2 handfuls at a time, move it around, and make sure that there's nothing in here I don't want in my jar. Once I'm happy with how clean they are, I've got another bowl here I'm gonna put these beans in too, which I cleaned this bowl, and I'm just gonna repeat that process until I've washed all these beans. Plus, we're gonna do the same thing to pinto beans. I'm gonna be canning these black beans in a different way than I have done in the past, because one of my goals this year, if you've noticed there's been a trend, is my goal is to have the highest quality product on my pantry shelf. It was a lot of effort to grow these beans, and I'm so thrilled with the harvest that I wanna make sure I follow all the steps to have the highest quality product from these homegrown beans, plus the pinto beans, and we end up doing some white beans as well. And that way that when I go to grab these beans off my pantry shelf, we can just enjoy them to the utmost degree. And I'm really excited to share this process with you today. Now that our black beans are clean and they're soaking in water, I'm gonna put a couple tablespoons of lemon juice. And what we're doing is we are pre-sprouting our black beans. Now, when I cook black beans, I always soak them overnight, typically, and this helps break down phytic acid. It makes them more digestible. The things that can give you kind of tummy aches when you eat beans, this helps prevent those issues. And I've always done this when I cook black beans, just to cook them to eat them for dinner that night, or the next day if I'm gonna soak them overnight. But I've always skipped this step when I can, and that doesn't really make sense to me because I know that it makes us feel better when we eat beans when we do it this way, and I grab my canned beans way more than I grab dried beans because the convenience of it. So this is what we're doing. We're gonna soak these overnight. I'm gonna cover this, but before I cover it, I'm gonna set this over here. I'm gonna do the exact same thing with pinto beans, because I only have 3 jars of pinto beans on my pantry shelf. We go through home canned beans a lot because they are so good. Now, these are not homegrown pinto beans. One day, maybe next year, I'll have homegrown pinto beans, but for now, these are from the store and they work just as well. Because these ones shouldn't have, you know, dirt from the garden in them, I'm going to just take about 2 cups at a time, wash them, and then get them in a bowl to soak so we can them tomorrow. What we're doing in this process is plumping up the beans, and I'm following the directions that is in my Presto manual. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can soak them overnight, or you can do a quick boil method, but I want to soak them overnight so I get the benefits of the pre-sprouting, and that is the way that I'm choosing to do it with the pinto beans, the white beans, and the black beans. But note, you can do a quick boil method as well. Once we soak these overnight, then we will come back tomorrow and we will par cook them before we pressure can them. So there's the pre-soak, and then the par cook, and then the canning. I got as many of the beans washed as I think I want to can. This is going to be probably a year's worth of pinto beans for Josh and I. And I'm going to fill these up just like I did with the black beans with water. I'm going to put a little bit of lemon juice in there as well. I think they are just so beautiful. I'm going to slide these over here and I'm going to get these covered too. Good morning, friend. It is time to start processing these beans. Plus, last night I went ahead and I also got some white beans soaking so we can get these canned up as well, because I don't have any of these canned in my pantry. For dinner tonight, we are going to make white chicken chili with some of these beans. So I haven't been able to make white chicken chili because I haven't had white beans. So I got these soaking. Now, we've done the first step. So there's 2 steps. There's the soaking or plumping of the beans, and I chose to do the soak method to help break down the phytic acid. The other option you have is to do a boil method, but we are not going to do that one. Now that we have pre-plumped our beans, we need to pre-cook them. So I'm following the directions that are laid out in my manual for my canner. I can link my canner and the equipment I'm going to be using along with the National Home Food Preservation website, and you can get free resources on that website as well. And for my canner, it's on page 63. We've now done the pre-soak method. We need to rinse these beans and pre-cook them. So we're going to start with the white beans because I have the fewest of these. And I don't want to mix my beans up. I want to keep my pinto beans separate from my white beans from my black beans. And I only have 1 pot big enough to do the pinto beans and black beans, so we're going to have to do it in a little bit of a step-by-step. So we will be able to get the canner going though while we're processing the next beans. So I've got my white beans here. I need to rinse them now. By rinsing them, we are rinsing off any of that leftover phytic acid. We're gonna get that into our pot, and we're gonna fill this with fresh water. And while this is filling, I can go ahead and start straining. Should we do the pinto beans or black beans next? I guess it doesn't totally matter, so we'll go ahead and get going on the black beans. The beans are covered with a couple inches of water, so I'm going to get these on the stove. And we're going to start cooking these. They need to come up to a boil, and while those are starting, I'll finish rinsing these ones. These are by far the best canned beans I have ever made. I am so excited to now know how to do it this way because it's the only way I'm going to do it moving forward. The flavor on these beans cannot be beat, and the texture is perfect. And so I'm really happy that I am now doing my canned beans this way. And I'm excited to share it with you because it is a new way that I am doing it. But it does take a little bit more effort up front, but I think the effort is worth it. And one reason why I'm doing so many of them is because of the little bit of effort it takes. I want it to be worth my time, and I'm only going to have to do it this one time this year, and then probably sometime in 2024 we will revisit having to put some more beans on the pantry shelf. But for now, I'm just grateful to have the time today to be able to tackle this pretty big project. It is a pretty big project. We are canning about, this is a guesstimate, we grew 9 pounds of black beans. I probably did another 9 to 10 pounds worth of pinto beans, plus the white beans, so we're probably about 25 pounds of beans. This is the last of the washed black beans going into the pot, so we're gonna fill this up with water. One other thing I did before I got ready for the day is I went ahead and I put a ton of pint jars in the dishwasher, and I just ran it so that these would be clean and ready for me as soon as our beans are ready to be put into jars. Just like we did with the white beans, I'm gonna fill this completely up with water. And while this is filling, I'm gonna go ahead and start processing some onions. I went down into the food storage room and I collected what I needed for tonight's dinner. We're gonna make some cornbread. We're gonna make our white chicken chili, so we needed broth and some peppers. I grabbed some chips to go on top of our white chicken chili. We're gonna do dinner in the Instant Pot because my stove is gonna be filled with pots and I'm not gonna have space on my stove for making dinner tonight. So I thought we could make the cornbread in the oven and we could make some white chicken chili in the Instant Pot. So I've got some onions here from the garden, and I chose the onions that needed to be used up first, the ones that had started to sprout. So I'm gonna peel the outer layer, and because we are pre-cooking our beans, we can actually infuse them with some flavor, which is fantastic. So what I'm gonna infuse them with is some onion, and I'm gonna keep the onions whole, so I'm just taking the root end off and the flowering end. I'm gonna peel the outer layer, and we're gonna keep these whole just like this. I think what I'm gonna do is move my white beans, because this is a smaller pot, to my smaller burner. I'm gonna put the lid on. We need to get some onions in those as well. And then we're gonna use my big burner for this huge pot. I also have a cayenne pepper from the garden. I'm gonna throw that on top. We're not actually gonna can the onions or peppers, but that's just gonna infuse flavor as it par cooks. So we've got that going. We need to get a lid on it. By doing this step, what we're doing is we're ensuring the best texture bean possible. I have never canned my beans this way before, but I did a lot of research, and this way not only can I infuse flavor, so I'm gonna get the best tasting bean possible, but because I pre-cook and pre-plump the beans before they go into the jar, what that does is once they go into the jar, they're already pre-plumped, and so instead of putting them in the jar dry and them having to cook and plump during the actual canning process, it tends to break beans and they don't hold their shape as well. So if you want to make something with beans and you want the beans out of the jar to be nice, whole, and plump and not broken, this is the correct way to do it. And I am all about following the rules so that I have a safe product on my pantry shelf, but that I also have the best tasting and the highest quality, texture, and everything. That has been my theme this year when it comes to canning. I want everything on my pantry shelf to be so delicious that I'm so excited to open the jar, because it is effort to do this, and so I want it to be exciting to open the jar and taste absolutely delicious. So I'm gonna put this jar back in the dishwasher because it's still warm and I wanna keep it warm. So I think what I'm gonna do is get some onions peeled for our white beans, plus I need to get some onions peeled for our pinto beans. The awesome thing about doing it this way as well is we've pre-soaked them, so we are also having the easiest digestible bean on our pantry shelf. So you could do the cook and plump method all in one if you want to do it that way, if you didn't think ahead to do the soak overnight method, and that is an option as well. But I wanted to do the soak overnight method. And I've been researching different pinto bean varieties that I could possibly grow in the garden that are pole bean varieties, so that I could get some more vertical space in the garden and maximize my garden space. And I've been looking at the variety Dragon Tongue beans, and they're a pinto bean-like bean. And they're supposed to be really prolific. So if you have any experience growing Dragon Tongue beans as pole beans for dried beans, all your input would be fantastic. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and cut up all of these onions here and get them peeled. This is a shallot. I don't want to peel that because I will use that when I want to use a shallot. We also need onion for dinner tonight. I was thinking about using my frozen onions, but I think I should, since I've already got this cutting board dirty with onion things, let's go ahead and slice up some fresh onion, and I'll leave the frozen onion that are pre-diced for when I don't have time or I don't want to messy up a cutting board. But since I've already got this cutting board messy, might as well go ahead and just chop up some fresh onion for tonight's dinner. This onion's got a little bad spot on it. Cut that off. Ooh. I have a frozen jalapeno. I think I'm gonna throw that in there as well. That'll be easy to see because it is green and these beans are white. I've been wanting to make chicken chili, white chicken chili for a while now, but I haven't had white beans. So I'm really looking forward to tonight's dinner. It's gonna be the perfect day for it. It is sunny out there, but it is chilly. I was also thinking, I think we'll have time in the kitchen. I'm all about maximizing my time in the kitchen too. If I'm already gonna be in here, I might as well get a couple things done. I saw a dessert recipe I really wanna give a try. I think I'm gonna have time to get some dessert made as well. So I'm gonna leave these whole for the pinto beans, and then I'm gonna slice just this one onion up. Wasn't exactly sure how many onions I would need. And we'll get this sliced up for, I think I might get the cornbread going too this morning because I'm in the kitchen. So I'm gonna preheat the oven to 350.
The knife is the most fundamental kitchen utensil we use on a daily basis, and for that I want to thank Nakano Knives for sponsoring today's video. Nakano is a Japanese brand that is passionate about sharp knives, and they know that a sharp knife makes the job of chopping and slicing that much more enjoyable. And so I want to thank them for sponsoring today's video. They currently are having their biggest sale of the year, which is 30% off if you shop through my link and use the code ACREHomestead. This sale is going on for a very limited time, and I will put the link in the description box and in a pinned comment. So if you are looking for a knife for yourself or for a loved one this holiday season, this just might be the perfect gift. Thank you again, Nakano, for sponsoring today's video.
The white beans have come to a boil, so I'm gonna turn the stove down until it's just a light simmer, and we're gonna simmer these for 30 minutes. We'll do the same thing when the black beans come to a boil, but it's gonna be a bit before that happens. For the cornbread, I like to make these cornbread mixes. This is my mom's cornbread recipe, and it is delicious. And I just put all the dry ingredients in here along with freeze-dried eggs, which is perfect because my chickens decided that they're not laying very much right now, and so I don't even need to use eggs for this. And what I like to do is right on the top, oh, there's some sugar in there. So if you don't like sweet cornbread, this is not gonna be the cornbread recipe for you. This recipe is a sweet cornbread, and it is delicious. So we'll get our cornbread mix in there. What I like to do is write on the lid what I need to add to finish out the cornbread. So here, I'm gonna take some of my pre-melted butter, and I'm just gonna use that to grease my baking dish. You can use cast iron, you can use whatever you want. I'm just gonna use this baking dish today because it's what I grabbed. We're gonna get that oiled. Add my butter to the cornbread. Water, you wouldn't add water except for the fact that I added freeze-dried eggs, so that water is just to reconstitute the eggs. Otherwise you would add eggs, and then I'm gonna add milk.
Cornbread and chili to me are one of my favorites, and this is the perfect combination. The white chicken chili that we're gonna make in just a little bit turns out so good. Normally I make a red sauce or like a red chili, And I've had other people's white chicken chili before. I have just never made it myself. And the recipe that I found online, which I will link down below, I can link my mom's cornbread recipe down below as well. It turns out really, really well. And it's an Instant Pot recipe, which I'm learning how to use more and more. And I'm definitely getting more comfortable using my Instant Pot. And it's just been really fun kind of going down that rabbit hole of learning to utilize my Instant Pot and my crock pot more. We've kind of gone through that journey together, and I definitely can, I'm pulling my Instant Pot out more because I am just so much more comfortable with it now. So we're gonna get the cornbread in the oven.
What I'm thinking I should do now while I'm waiting for my beans on the stove is I can go ahead and rinse these beans and get these ready, so as soon as the black beans are done, we can get these cooking. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I also just pulled out some chicken thighs from the freezer for tonight's dinner and some corn from the freezer for tonight's dinner. This is my 2-cup measure. I love this thing. It was a gift. I would have never thought how handy a 2-cup measure would come into handiness. I don't even think that's a word, until I received one, and I couldn't find it for like 6 months. I had it in with my bird seed. And so I have not been the one filling up my bird feeders. Josh has been the one filling up my bird feeders for me. And this is where my 2-cup measure found itself in my bird seed. So I reclaimed it. I have enough cup measures that I could sacrifice a 1-cup measure in my bird seed as a scoop, as opposed to using the 1 2-cup measure I have.
Now, to be fair to Josh, I was the one that brought out the 2-cup measure to fill my bird feeders the first time. I just forgot I left it out there, and it's being used as the bird seed scoop. So I will just grab a different scoop for the bird seed.
Speaking of, I can see a squirrel on my bird feeder right now. I want to show you this tree that we have out here that is in full fall bloom. Oh my goodness. There's the pesky squirrel. I just scared it off, but there's my bird feeder. But look at this tree. With the blue sky today, it's stunning. Just might have to have my second cup of coffee out there this morning because it is so beautiful. It's like the perfect fall day right now. So I don't really have much to do at this point. We've got our cornbread in the oven. Our white beans are almost done. I think I need to turn that down. I've been kind of playing with the heat on this. Let's see if we can, oh, I think I can go ahead and set the timer for the black beans. So we're gonna have those cook for 30 minutes. This is almost done, and I should probably set a timer. I do not have a timer currently for my cornbread. I just turned my light on. Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get some of these dishes cleaned up, and then I will sit down and have a second cup of coffee while I'm waiting for that to come to a boil. Okay, the timer has gone off for the white beans, so I'm gonna strain these. And we can get these jarred up. I'm not gonna jar up the ones we're gonna use for tonight's dinner because there's no point in canning them and then cooking them for dinner. But I do want to jar up the ones that we are going to pressure can so I can get some of these clean jars out of the dishwasher. When you're canning now, you do not have to sanitize or sterilize your jars before you can in them because they're going to become sterile in the canning process, but you do want them very, very clean. So I just run them on a dishwasher cycle, and that's how I get them nice and clean. I also ran my lids. These are all brand new lids as well, just so that those are clean, fresh from the factory. I don't want them having any sort of particles in my food. We do need to top these with very hot water, so I'm gonna get some water heating up. I think I'm just gonna use this pot to store the beans that I'm gonna use for tonight's dinner in, so probably, that's probably good for tonight's dinner. I'm not gonna put the onions or peppers in my jars. So as I get to those, I'll just make sure to fish them out. And we're gonna leave 1-inch head space. The beans are already plumped to the proper size, so we don't have to worry about expansion or anything like that. They smell really, really delicious. And there's a piece of onion there that I'm gonna get out of there. That's why I wanted to leave the onions basically whole so that they would be easy to make sure they don't go into my jar. Now that I got each jar filled, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of, or half a teaspoon of salt. This is optional. That's one cool thing about canning your own beans, is you can control the sodium content. And then I've got this extremely hot water. And we're gonna fill each jar with 1-inch headspace with really hot water. I will debubble using a chopstick. Adjust the headspace as needed. I need to get some more hot water. Our black beans are almost done, which is gonna be perfect timing, so we'll be able to run a whole canner load with these white beans and black beans. Okay, we're gonna wipe the rims. We only have a couple more minutes on the black beans, so I'm gonna get set up here so that we can get some jars ready for the black beans as soon as we get them out of the boiling water. I'm just gonna start lining jars up here so we can fill these. And then I think what I'm gonna do is go ahead and get my pressure canner out on the stove ready to go, so that once these black beans are in these jars, we can get the pressure canner going. My mother-in-law is letting me borrow her pressure canner today so that we can get this process going a little bit faster. So that once the pinto beans have processed on the stove, then we can get 2 canners going on the stove at one time. I can fit 20 pints in one of the canners on the stove. My mother-in-law and I have the same pressure canner. So we have 6 of the white beans. So 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So I'm gonna take these out. I think our cornbread is done. Let me get a fork and poke it. Perfect, coming out clean. So we're gonna set that there. And my timer did go off for my beans, so I'm gonna turn these off. We're gonna get these strained so we can fill some jars. I think what I'm gonna do first is go ahead and fish out my pepper and the onion so that I don't have to worry about it later. The nice thing is this onion held up its shape a little bit better than those little ones I was using, so it's a lot easier to fish out. I got all the black beans strained out, so I'm gonna rinse this out. And before I do anything, I want to get the pinto beans cooking so that those can be doing its first round of cooking. So I've got the soaked pinto beans here. We can just put them right in this pot. I'm gonna bring this over here so I have less to carry it once we fill it with our water. And then we'll add our onions to the top. That was nice having them on the top, because then I could just fish them out. And while this is filling, I'm going to get my canner on the stove. So the canner can be heating up while I'm filling the jars with the black beans. canner is going to have the proper amount of water you're supposed to put into it. So the best way to know how much water to add is follow the manual that you have. So I'm gonna get that heating up, and while that's heating up, we can actually get these beans into the jars. I'm gonna follow the same process I followed with the white beans, where we're gonna take our now soaked and par-cooked black beans. I'm gonna fill each jar to 1 inch head space. I like canning in pints for my beans. I used to can all my beans in quarts. Whoop. But I have found over the years of canning that I prefer it to be in pints, just because we are more likely to eat the whole entire jar in one sitting, instead of me having to just open part of it, use part of it, and then put it in the fridge and trying to think of what I need to use the rest of the jar for. I just prefer pints. But that just takes time trying to figure out what your family prefers. But you definitely can, can beans in quarts if you have a larger family. I have some water heating up, so once we get the salt in each jar, we can add the water. I like to add the salt before I add the water when I do beans, because then I can see which jars I've already added the salt to. Just like with the white beans, we're gonna fill the jars, and then we'll wipe the rims, debubble, new lid, ring, and we'll get these in the canner.
It is a little bit of musical chairs when it comes to my stove, because I only have one pot big enough to par cook the beans. So we needed to do the black beans and then the pinto beans separate. And then once the pinto beans are done boiling, then we can get the second canner on the stove. So it worked out perfect on this day with the beans and the canners to get all of this done in a relatively efficient time frame.
I went ahead and jarred up the rest of the black beans that need to go into the canner still. I pulled out the rest of the jars for the pinto beans, and I'm gonna go ahead and put salt in each one of these jars so that once the beans go on top, then we can get the lids rings on and get them in the canner. I have officially set the timer for the pinto beans because they are pre-cooking, and we're just waiting for our canner to come up. As soon as I get salt into these, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get dinner going. And even though it's only lunchtime right now, I can get it going in the Instant Pot, and then I can just have it on the keep warm setting until dinner, so that I can just keep being busy in the kitchen. And then once we're done with the canning project, dinner will be done, and I can totally clean up the kitchen and have a night off. I needed to get a little bit more salt, and I did go ahead and I put some dishes in the dishwasher because all the jars are officially out of the dishwasher now. So my sink is clean. I will need to wash by hand those really big stainless steel bowls, but I'll get those in just a minute. Now we're just waiting for our pinto beans to be done. I think before I get dinner going, I'm gonna wash these dishes. This canner is venting, so I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes, and my timer just went off for these beans, so we can get these drained and jarred up. Before I start filling the beans in jars, I want to get this pressure canning on the stove and heating up so we can start actually getting our second canner going. I think we're going to need to run a total of 3 canner loads to get everything done today. I think I can go ahead and start jarring those while that fills. It's vented for 10 minutes, so we're gonna get the weight on and we're gonna watch this come up to pressure. Okay, I'm gonna get this stove going. I'm gonna get the lid on. Now we have 2 canners officially going. I still have not made dinner yet, but we have got all the pinto beans jarred up at this point. So the only big dish I still need to clean is the big pot we boiled these beans in. I've got them seasoned and the hot water on the top. And we've got 18 more jars that need to go into the canner. So that means total, we have 20, oh, there's only 19 in there. Because with the wide mouth, I couldn't quite fit 20 in there. We're going to run the canner 3 times, which is what I was expecting, and I'm totally happy with that. So as soon as I get these all with the lids and the rings, I'm gonna tidy up the rest. We really haven't made that much of a mess. It's been a pretty straightforward and streamlined process. We will then get dinner going. And I'm really tempted to cut into that cornbread because it smells incredible. Yeah, we've hardly made any dishes, even though we've started making dinner tonight. My 1 canner is almost up to pressure. So pressure canning is the only safe way to can beans. You cannot water bath can beans because they are a low acid food, and to kill what could potentially be botulism in your jar, you need it above boiling. And so when you pressure can, you're heating the inside of this canner well above boiling, and that's how you know that you are going to get a safe product on your pantry shelf. And the funny thing with temperature and pressure and all that stuff is it can vary depending on your altitude. So for my altitude, I am going to be pressure canning these at 11 pounds of pressure, but for your altitude, it could be different. So that's why you want to reference your canning cookbook you trust, your canner's manual, the National Home Food Preservation website, which I will link down below. And I am almost at to pressure. I'm about a half a pound away, so it'll only take a second to get back to, or to get up to my pressure point. And we need to pressure can pints for 75 minutes. And if I was doing quarts, it would be 90 minutes. I try never to remember the canning times when I'm pressure canning. I always like to re-reference before I set my timer with the proper time, just because you want to make sure you're following the rules, because then if you're following the rules, you know you're going to have a safe product on your shelf for your family. So I need some more lids. Let's see. I'm going to have to hand wash some more lids because I need 6 more lids, and I've got some in here that are new, but they need to be washed. I'm waiting for my second canner to come up to pressure, so we're gonna go ahead and get going on dinner. I just put my Instant Pot on saute mode, and I have some garlic butter. We are going to saute up the chicken first. So we're gonna make a white, kind of creamy chicken chili. I'm gonna open up my broth and my jar of peppers. This is gonna come together so incredibly quickly because it's just gonna be so easy. The only thing we had to do for this was chop the onion, and I did go ahead and dice up the chicken. These are chicken thighs. You could probably use chicken thighs in this recipe or chicken breast. I tend to gravitate toward thighs because they're a little more forgiving when it comes to the cooking process and them not completely drying out. You don't even have to cut them. I just decided to because they were thawed. You can keep them whole and then instant pot cook them and then shred them after they're cooked. I just added the diced chicken to the Instant Pot, and we're gonna give this a good sear. I'm gonna season the chicken with some salt and pepper, and then I'm not gonna stir it until we get a nice brown color on that chicken. So now that our chicken is getting some color to it, I'm gonna let it cook for just a little bit longer. I got one of these Instant Pot grippers, so you don't have to hold it anymore. So I can link this down below. That works so perfectly. It's like habit wanting to hold this. So now that we got some good color on our chicken, I'm gonna add the onions, and we're gonna saute these as well. And then I have a jar of my home canned peppers. We're gonna add that. We're gonna use the liquid from that to kind of, well, I might have to use a little bit of the broth too, to deglaze. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. Deglaze the bottom of that pan a little bit. I just put my weight on my second canner because it had vented for the full 10 minutes, so we can finish up our soup, which I'm really looking forward to. This already smells incredible. I've got some smoked paprika. We already have garlic in here because of that garlic butter. I've got some cumin. I'm not really measuring. I will link a written recipe down below. Some coriander, some corn we preserved up together this summer that is absolutely incredible. I'm gonna mix that together. And then we've got these beans here, and these are already par cooked. They do need to finish the cooking process when we pressure cook this Instant Pot, and then I'm gonna add some broth. It's amazing how this can already smell so divine, and it is not. This clip, friend, incredible. It keeps the pot right where you want it. Game changer. So now I've got my last ingredient, which is cream cheese. This is what's gonna make it kind of creamy. If you don't have cream cheese and you have some half and half, you could, after you pressure cook it, just put in some half and half or some heavy cream. You probably don't have to use, or sour cream. Some substitutions there. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this off. I'm gonna put the lid on, and everything is basically cooked. We just need it to all cook together. I think I'm gonna cook it for about 10 minutes on high. We will probably have to adjust, let's see, manual, and let's do 10 minutes. We probably will have to add a little bit more salt and pepper, but we'll do that once this comes up to pressure and then releases from pressure. I think I'm gonna do 12 minutes. So we can turn this canner off. This canner is now done. It's processed for the proper time, but it's still at 14 pounds of pressure. So I do not want to touch it. I do not want to try to cool it. I do not want to try to open it. I do not want to take the weight off. It's going to take a good 30 minutes probably for this to depressurize. So just like an Instant Pot, pressure canners, they take time to come up to pressure, and then they take time to come down from pressure. So when this comes down to 0, and probably even after it comes down to 0 pressure, I'll let it sit for another 15, 20 minutes. We then can empty it and get these jars into it. These beans are now, I mean, they're still piping hot, but they're a little less hot. Look how beautiful these are. It really makes a difference if you par cook them before you put them in the jar. They just are so absolutely stunning coming out of the canner like this. So we're gonna get these out. I completely forgot that I was gonna make dessert. And so I went to go find a recipe that I wanted to make, and I realized that I don't have any eggs in my house right now, and I'm not about to go run into town to get eggs right now just for eggs. So look how beautiful these are. These are the black beans. They're so pretty. They definitely are much prettier when you do it this way than when I would can them the way I used to can them. I'm so happy with the way that these beans look coming out of the canner. So I'm not about to run into town just for eggs. One way I try to conserve and be responsible is by not going into town for one grocery item. So I happen to have some cookie dough in my freezer, and that's another thing. I already have some dessert prepped in my freezer. I can go ahead and make for dessert tonight. So I am gonna get some cookie dough onto a cookie sheet. I'm gonna put that in a 350-degree oven. Whenever I make cookies from frozen cookie dough, I like to reduce the temperature of the oven by 25 degrees. And usually the cook time is added about a minute or two. So whenever you're taking jars out of your canner, you never want to put them directly onto your countertop. So I've got some placemats here. I'm gonna set these jars onto. I need this water to cool down a little bit. Maybe I'll dump it out and put fresh water in it. Then we can load up the third round of jars, because those jars at this point now are cool because they've been sitting on the counter waiting to go into the canner this whole time. I do want to give this soup a taste test to see if we need to adjust the seasonings at all. It's very, very hot. So I have it on the keep warm setting because this is done. I was able to mix in the cream cheese. And we're just going to use this like a crock pot. Come dinner time, we will have this for dinner. Okay, that is delicious. I don't think I need to adjust the salt, the pepper. It's got an extreme amount of sweetness only coming from the corn. I'm telling you, friend, that home preserved, I was gonna say homegrown, not homegrown, locally sourced corn I got from that local farmer that I put up is one of our favorite things that I put up all year long, and it is phenomenal. It makes a difference. It is so good. This is so good. So how we're gonna serve this is I shredded up some cheese. We'll put some cheese on it, some hot sauce we'll drizzle on the top with a little bit of cilantro and green onion from the garden I harvested yesterday. We'll serve it up with the cornbread, and this is going to be a fabulous dinner. So now I need to get the canner loaded back up so we can get going on the last round of beans today. I went ahead and put fresh water in my canner. And this canner is now done. This has all the pinto beans in it and I think some black beans as well. Here we're gonna get this starting to heat up, but before we get it to heat up, I think what I wanna do is get all these jars in there so that they all can heat together because these are not warm at this point. And you know, now that these are wide mouth, I don't know if I can actually get 20 in a canner. If they're regular mouth jars, I know I can get 20 pints in my Presto pressure canner, but if they're wide mouth, I don't know if I can get that many. Nope, yep, you can only get 9 on the bottom. Got them all to fit. Exactly 3 canners loads worth. I did not measure that by any means. I'm going to turn this one on. So now I only have 1 canner that I am babysitting. I do have electric stovetop canners, which if you're interested in that, I can link that down below as well. I knew that I was going to be in the kitchen basically all day babysitting these, and that's why I decided to go ahead and use my stovetop one so it'd be less canner loads. But I do love my stovetop ones, but those are ones that I usually use when I don't have time to sit here and babysit them, which I had a little bit more time. I cannot get over how beautiful these jars are. So, so beautiful. They are much prettier with the soak and boil method, plus they taste delicious. I have tasted just the ones that were par cooked and they've got a fantastic flavor to them. I am thrilled. I'm excited to see what these pinto beans look like coming out of the canner. I will show you what these look like when they come out of the canner. This is my highest powered burner here. I have a harder time keeping this element with this canner at a lower pressure. So this sat around 14 pounds of pressure the whole time it was canning. And this one, I'm able to keep it around 12. I only for my elevation have to keep it at 11, but I have a hard time with my stove regulating it to stay right at 11. It's okay if it goes above, but if at any point during the entire canning process, if your pressure dips below the pounds of pressure you need to can, you have to start completely over. That's why I like my or my countertop ones, because I don't have to pay attention. These ones, I have to babysit and I have to watch them like a hawk. I cannot let that dial gauge get below the pounds of pressure or I start the time over again. And I don't really want to do that. So I'll show you what these look like coming out of the pressure canner, and I'll show you what my cookies look like coming out of the oven, and dinner tonight is going to be fabulous and I don't even have to think about it. The kitchen is basically clean. I've got the dishwasher going, and we had a fabulous day canning a year's worth of beans. We go through a lot of beans, and home canned beans are absolutely delicious. And if you've been intimidating to try pressure canning, I hope this encouraged you that you can do it. Just make sure you follow the rules to the T, and you can have a safe and delicious product on your family's pantry shelf. If you enjoyed this, I can pop a couple of my other videos here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I cannot believe that we grew these black beans. We planted them together. We harvested them together. We now processed and preserved them together. And now going into fall and winter, we get to enjoy cooking with them together. So thank you for being here. I'll pop a couple of my other videos here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I greatly appreciate the fact that you take time out of your day to spend time with me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.